Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Sorry I haven't uploaded in about 2 weeks, almost three. I got pretty sick there. And before you ask, nah, it wasn't the coof. I believe it was like allergies that like became a sinus infection. Um, but I'm still kind of sick. Got a little bit of a cough, so if I do that during the video, I'm sorry. Um, Thank you guys for getting me to 10 subscribers. Um, my next video that I had planned right before I got sick was I was supposed to do a 10 subscriber special for you guys, but unfortunately, I got sick and I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. Um, so I'm gonna have to postpone that a little bit. Part five was going to be coming out next, but I figured I'd give that a little bit of a break and move on to my next plan, which I'd already decided to start doing, which was this anime for noobs, where I go over different topics. I kind of got this idea from doing my Gundam for Beginners guide. I figured, if this guide helps people, it'd be pretty cool. But what if I could help people with anime as a whole and not just Gundam? So I figured I'd do that, but I would try and shorten it and talk about like specifically like one topic, tell you about it, give you an idea of what it's like, kind of tell you what it is, and then give you like any kind of recommendations and stuff like that of that type of topic that you can see in certain shows and do that. I did have a different video planned that I was doing whenever I was still really sick, but I only got about like 30% of that video done, maybe 40% before I just started feeling awful. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just gotta get off and do this some other time. So that video's got to be redone completely. It'll probably eventually come out, but I got to redo all the audio because I sounded awful. I was way more stuffed up. I was coughing a lot more. So hopefully this will be a lot better as a video to come back to. But thank you for coming back. Like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Share the video and comment. All of that really helps the channel. I appreciate it. And hey, if it helps you at all, tell me in the comments. Tell me if this series is something you'd like me to continue to do. I appreciate it. And let's get started with Anime for Noobs, topic number one, Shonen. So, Anime for Noobs, topic number one, I really wanted to talk about. Originally, I wanted to talk about what a gateway anime was, but I think it's better if I hold that off for number two. I believe the first one I should really go over is Shonen. What Shonen anime is. Um, so if you're new and you have no idea, you don't know a lot about anime, and you're looking up some kind of guide, and you happen to find this, um, you don't know what a shonen is. Typically, it translates to kid entertainment or boy entertainment. So it's a genre of anime, and the thing is about anime genres is instead of focusing on a style like horror or comedy, an anime can have all kinds of different things wrapped up in it. So you can't just label a show with those simple terms because that show may have a little bit of everything in it. The best thing to do is to actually label a show when it comes to anime based on the demographic. So that would, of course, be gender, age, um, and sometimes even orientation, but we'll get to those genres later on. But for now, we're talking about the most common and most popular forms of anime. And the most common and most popular genre, still to this day, is shonen. Now, typically, like I said, it basically means boy entertainment. But basically, these are shows meant for younger boys, but girls can watch them too, obviously. But shows like Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, Fairy Tale, One Piece, Attack on Titan, all those kind of shows, even Death Note. And you can tell like they're all kind of similar, but some of them are more drastically different in tone and in style. And that's the thing about shonen anime is that they're not, like I said, they're not based on a certain particular type of thing. They're based on a certain age group, and the age group primarily it's around 10, I think, like 10 to like 18 or 10 to 20. It's a pretty large group, but it's like older kids, younger teenagers, and young adults who are the main demographic for shonen anime. And it can kind of leave you with a little bit of a weird feeling because, it is still mostly for kids. So, because of that, it will have some really awkward moments that just sound, they're just like really kiddified or really childish. And it's like, that's just so corny. And then at other moments, there'll be times where characters are getting ripped in half and their guts fall out and you see all the blood and gore land on the concrete. Sometimes they're not that bad. Sometimes they're a mixture between the two, and sometimes they go full Rambo. So kind of depends. But this is the most common genre. So now you basically know what it is. It's a genre of anime meant for boys of a basically teenager age group. I'm going to move on to some of the things that make a shonen, like typical shonen tropes, that to look out for, so that this way you can actually tell if it is. I'm not going to try and spend too much time on this, but that's basically what it is. So some of the more common tropes that you'll see with shonen is like the main character is not always, but typically some kind of like chosen one. Again, like I said, this isn't always the case, but there's lots of shows where the main character is, such as Naruto, and several others. And then, of course, you also have other shonens where, like, friendship is like the ultimate power. And if you have friends, you're basically indestructible. Fairy Tail is real bad about that. Even Naruto, to some extent, is pretty bad about that, amongst other shows. What else? They are also the tonal shift of these shows can be all over the place, and that's because the tone of the show changes based on the story arc. So typically, when you enter a new story arc, the whole show shifts its focus to be more in that style or in that tone. So a story arc will usually be more serious, or one other one will be more comedic, another one will be more dramatic or sad, depressing, whatever you want to call it. And the whole show's demeanor will change to match that new story arc. And then once that story arc is over, the show changes styles again. Now, sometimes things will change in the middle of an episode, and you'll have a serious moment followed by a comedic moment, but it's not too bad, and really good writing can make that kind of jarring transition pretty good, actually. But overall, those are some of the more common traits. Also, really powerful or overpowered characters that are technically overpowered, but don't know how good they are. Typically, this is the main character. They don't really know how powerful they are until once they go through all this training, and then they get to be able to control their power, like My Hero Academia. Like literally, like that's the definition of a shonen main character, where they're overpowered AF, but they can't technically control it and use it to its full potential yet because they haven't gone through all the training and they haven't disciplined themselves and things like that. So they basically haven't gone through the hardships that the rest of the story will prepare them for. Again, this isn't always the case with shonen, but these are typical shonen tropes I'm going over. Another one, of course, can be, depending on the show, can be some like lewd humor where they're like making like sexually charged jokes. Sometimes it can get pretty serious, like, oh wow, like she actually took off her shirt or something like that. Or it can be just quaint, like he barely brushes up against her butt or something. Like stuff like that. It just kind of depends on the show. But overall, those are some of the more common stereotypes of a shonen anime. Again, some shows do alter this, and they'll have like the main character be really weak, but like everybody else is overpowered. Stuff in that nature. But overall, that's basically what shonen is. It's just a genre where um, it's meant for older kids and teenagers that blur the line between kids show and more adult show, because sometimes they can be really gory and have a lot more swearing in them and maybe even a little bit more nudity than you would expect for a show meant for kids. And then, of course, then you have the other side where you have some of these shows that are more sensitive to the fact that they know this genre is really popular outside of Japan. So they also try and make it for the worldwide stage. So a lot of those other things are scaled back. It just kind of depends on who you are. Personally, I don't really care about any of that, but it just, some people do. So I just wanted to kind of highlight it for you to make sure you know that that kind of stuff can be in there. Um, just look at Inuyasha. Technically, Inuyasha is not a shonen. It's more of a shoujo, which we'll get to that in a different video. But, that's what I wanted to say, really. Just kind of wanted to give any kind of beginners an idea of what shonen anime is and, like, what to expect. So that's what I'm going to... that's pretty much it. And hold on. I'm going to go on to the next thing. I'm going to give you a few shows that, if you're new, you might want to check out that are shonen. So real quick, any kind of show that's a shonen that I suggest you check out. Most of them I've already said, but like Naruto is like my ultimate one. It's one of my favorite shows. I know a lot of people aren't huge fans of Naruto. They prefer other shonen series, and that's totally fine. But that's the one I personally recommend because it's about ninjas, and ninjas are awesome. Um, I was born in the early '90s, so ninjas were still really popular in the '90s. Um, and then of course you have Rama One Half is another really big one that I love. It's an older one. It actually comes from '89. So this will give you a taste of older anime, but it's not so old to where you can't watch it. It's it's really good though because it's more of a traditional shonen, because back then, back in the '80s and a lot of the '90s, most shonen anime were based around just martial arts, just like fist fighting. And Dragon Ball was the first one, and then you had Ranma and a few others. So you could kind of see where that stereotype started, but then after a while, that kind of died off, and other things took basically popped up in its place. Um, Another one I'd recommend, of course, would be Fairy Tail. Um, I personally think Fairy Tail is pretty interesting. I haven't watched a whole lot of it. I know it's really long, but that's common. Common for shonen. Shonen anime are usually much longer because they're basically, if they start off successful, they just keep making more of the show until it becomes unsuccessful. And instead of actually ending it, they typically just stop it. And the only time they actually end it is when that show is actually getting a sequel. Um, but that's just, how the industry works sometimes. But yeah, whenever you have really long shows like this, for a beginner, it can be kind of intimidating. So I suggest you get into them, but also keep in mind that you might want to take periodic breaks, like stop watching it for a little bit, watch shorter animes, and then come back to these longer shonen shows. Um, and what other one should I recommend? I guess I'd go ahead and go with Death Note to give you a different flavor or a different taste of what shonen can do, because it doesn't always have to be about fist fighting. It could be a battle of the mind, which is kind of what Death Note is. It's okay. It's not one of my favorites, but it's a big show. So I figured I should go ahead and give it a fair shake. And speaking of flavor, I'll leave you with one last one. It's a little bit more on the crazy side, but Food Wars. It's a shonen. It's about food. It's got all kinds of weird humor and other things in it. So if you want a show that's all about basically about chefs going to school, I mean that's what it is. Um, there you go. And also keep in mind, shonen anime typically take place a lot in schools, and anime in general does. But that's just another thing to keep in mind. School is a big part of Japanese culture and a big part of their life. So a lot of anime take place in Japanese schools, and it's basically a huge stereotype. Not stereotype, but what do you call it? Uh, Cliche that happens in anime. So make sure you're prepared for that. So if you're older and you're not in school, shonen anime might not be for you. But if you're in school or if you don't really care, you still want to watch it, then that's fine. Just want to make sure you were aware of that. And I think that'd be all the ones I'd personally recommend right now. I could recommend more, but I guess I could recommend one more. And I don't want to recommend it, but I feel like I should out of respect for the entire industry. And that would be Dragon Ball Z. That or One Piece. They're some of the most legendary shonens. I personally don't like them, but you might, and a lot of people started with these shows as well. And who knows, you might like them and like other shows that I recommend, or that I did recommend. And of course, don't feel like you have to watch these. Go out and find your own shonen that you're interested in watching. Don't just take the ones that I recommend. Go and look for some. You might discover something like Black Clover and are more interested in that, or Blue Exorcist. Both shonens, not hugely popular, but they have pretty big fan bases. And from what I hear, pretty good. So, yeah, just go ahead and you can check that out. And, yeah, I think that's it. I mean, that's really all I have to talk about when it comes to shonen. Just give you an overview of basically what to expect and give you some recommendations. And you guys can decide what you want to do from there. So, again, thank you for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe notification bell, share the video, and leave a comment if you want. And I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm not going to make any promises. I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll see when we get there, I guess. But I'll see you next time. Yokai out.